After back-to-back console releases, Nintendo decided to head back to the Game Boy Color, and they released two Zelda games at the exact same time, Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons. These were essentially the same game, kind of like in the same vein that Pokemon Red and Blue were the same game, but Oracle of Ages was very much puzzle-focused, and Oracle of Seasons was very much action-oriented. Now, the thing was, is once you beat one game, you could link that information and transfer it over to the other game. And only by doing this, essentially beating one game and then using that information to beat the other game, would you get the true ending. It was a very interesting aspect that Nintendo did not take again, but they were still fantastic Zelda games. While Ages and Seasons might begin differently and have diverse story elements, it is not required to play one to understand the other. In Ages, Viran, the Sorceress of Shadow, is attempting to create enough fear and destruction in the world to light the flame of sorrow. The game also deals with a past and present world called Librania. In Seasons, General Onyx is attempting to create the same thing, fear and chaos in the world to light the flame of destruction. Instead of a past-present timeline, Seasons deals with multiple lands, Holodrum and Symbrosia. While Link is able to defeat both of these enemies in their respective games, the bosses are eventually able to achieve their end goal of lighting the flames. After defeating one game, the player would receive a 20-character passcode. Upon meeting certain NPCs in the other game, they would input this code. This would unlock certain things in the world, such as an additional quest to rescue Princess Zelda, and only with this passcode could you play in a world where both of the flames are lit. Princess Zelda actually represents a third flame, the Flame of Despair. This is the ultimate goal of all the enemies in both games, because lighting the three flames will resurrect Ganon. This is the true ending, where Link battles Ganon and eventually defeats him. These games were initially to be called the Triforce Trilogy, when actually be remakes of the original NES games. But the idea was eventually pushed aside and the games were rebranded to remove all elements of the Triforce theme. But if you look closely at Seasons, several of the bosses in the game look very similar to the bosses in the original Legend of Zelda. It was 6 months after Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons came out that Nintendo released its newest home console, the Nintendo GameCube. But it would be in 2003 before we got our new Zelda for it. And this Zelda was going to bring some big changes to the series. First, it was going to be a completely different presentation. Second, we were getting some massive revelations about our favorite hero, Link, in Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Wind Waker begins with the telling of a legend that has been passed down to the people of the Great Sea for generations. There was once a mighty kingdom where a great golden power resided. An evil being known as Ganondorf seized this power and used it to spread horror and darkness across the land. Suddenly a young boy in green appeared, known as the Hero of Time, and defeated Ganondorf with the great blade of evil's bane. The story ends saying that the evil of that day will return, but the hero shall not. It's quite obvious that this legend is actually a retelling of Ocarina of Time. Cut to the present, a small island known as the Outset Island is where a boy named Link lives, along with his grandmother and sister, Ariel. The elders of the Outset Island dress their youth in green clothes as they become the same age as the Hero of Time, hoping to bring the children the same courage that he had. As it's Link's birthday, he's given the well-known green cap and tunic by his grandmother, and his sister presents him with permission to use her telescope for the day. As Link uses the telescope, he sees a large bow known as the Helmarok King, with a girl in his claw flying away from a ship to a nearby forest. Link sets out to investigate. After he rescues the girl, he sees the bird instead capture Ariel. The girl Link rescued is named Tetra, the captain of a pirate ship. She agrees to help Link rescue his sister, and takes him to the Forsaken Fortress, where an unknown figure is holding several kidnapped girls. But Link is quickly overwhelmed by the Helmarok King and is left to die. When he awakens, he is greeted by the talking boat, known as the King of Red Lions, and explains exactly what Link must do in order to defeat Ganondorf. Wind Waker is a pretty big departure from previous Zelda titles. First of all, Hyrule is no more. After a massive flood, the only land are a few sparse islands located throughout the game. Second, and the most obvious, is the cell shading of the game. Many people were caught off guard when Wind Waker was released because they were hoping Nintendo would take full advantage of the GameCube's power and create a realistic-looking Zelda title. But all those fears were put aside because the cell shading is absolutely gorgeous. It looks like a Pixar film. Because of the cell shading, Link's eyes are much larger, and the developers use this to give hints to the player if they're stuck. If, for example, you need to open a locked door, his eyes might shift into the direction of a key that you can use. From a gameplay standpoint, Wind Waker is very much like Ocarina. Z-targeting is here, as are all those classic weapons. This time, when Link is locked onto a target, he can actually parry the incoming attacks if he strikes at just the right time. Music is again a big factor. Instead of an ocarina, Link has the Wind Waker, which is a music baton that he can use to control the winds through various songs. Wind Waker was also the first title to incorporate some type of multiplayer. If you had a Game Boy Advance, you were able to hook it up to the GameCube and use it as a pseudo-second player. Whoever was using the Game Boy would be able to give hints, uncover secrets, use a much more detailed map, and help player 1 in battles. The biggest revelation Wind Waker gave to the gaming community was the fact that 1. Link was not the same person in each game. Unless specifically defined like the first and second Zelda or Ocarina and Majora's Mask, each time we played a new Zelda title, Link was in fact a different being, just given the same name and title of Hero of Time. 2. Because of the destroyed Hyrule and the retelling of Ocarina at the beginning, this gave rise to the idea of a specific Zelda timeline. Obviously at this moment, Wind Waker must be the last Zelda title because there isn't a Hyrule anymore. So where do the other games fit in? This is a concept that I'll discuss later in the retrospective. Aside from the initial concerns regarding graphics, Wind Waker did have one problem. The sea was so large that it would take people a long time to get from one island to the other. But in reality, Nintendo did this because as the person was traveling from one island to the other, the game would be loading up that said island. This way you didn't have to experience any long loading times or loading times at all while on the Great Sea. Wind Waker went on to be one of the highest praised Zelda games ever. It's actually the 4th of 13 games to be given a perfect score by the Japanese magazine Famitsu, and it's currently sitting at a 96 out of 100 on Metacritic. This type of cel-shaded presentation would be seen again in future Zelda titles. Prior to Wind Waker coming out, there was a re-release of Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past on the Game Boy Advance. In addition, there was another game on here entitled Four Swords. It was a multiplayer game. Now, it obviously was not the focus of this. People didn't buy this just to play Four Swords. And everybody needed to have their own Game Boy, everyone needed to have their own copy of the game, and you did not buy this for Four Swords. You bought it for A Link to the Past. But Nintendo would again visit the Four Swords universe to the GameCube entitled Four Swords Adventures. They both dealt with a character named Vaati, who we'll probably meet again in a future game. But Vaati is, coming to power, he's stealing maidens, and it's up to Link again to save the world. So, while this may have been the first time we experienced Four Swords Adventures would be the first time we got a full game based on this concept. To bring everyone up to speed, the story in Four Swords for the Game Boy was this. Prior to the game, a wind mage called Vaati had been raiding villages in the country and kidnapping maidens and taking them to his palace. Only one person defeated Vaati, and it was his cursed sword that helped. By splitting the hero into 4 people, he was able to overwhelm Vaati and seal him in the sword himself. Once defeated, the villagers built a shrine for the sword and placed a seal on it to keep Vaati in it forever. The game picks up with Princess Zelda visiting the shrine, when she believes the seal might be weakening. As she and Link investigate, Vaati, who already broke the seal, captures her. As he leaves, he knocks Link unconscious. A fairy appears to Link and tells him to take the sword and defeat Vaati. As he takes the sword, Link splits into 4 people. After finding and defeating Vaati, seals him in the sword once again. Link then returns to the shrine, places the sword back into his pedestal, and returns to a single person. Four Swords Adventures for the GameCube picks up a while after these events. During a severe storm, Zelda once again believes the seal is weakening. She calls Link to protect her and the other maidens in case Vaati escapes again. As they get to the castle, Shadow Link appears and captures the nearby maidens and seals them in crystals. Link pulls the Four Swords to defeat the Shadow Link, only to break the seal and release Vaati. Once free, Vaati causes fear and chaos across Hyrule. As the game progresses, it's revealed that the Dark World is slowly coming into Hyrule, and people are being abducted. The Knights of Hyrule were taken and have been replaced by evil versions of themselves. They raided, conquered, and now control the castle. It's finally revealed that Ganon is the one who has masterminded this entire conflict. He's tricked Link into releasing Vaati, and then tricked Vaati into capturing the maidens, so Ganon may steal their power. And then he tricked Vaati again into taking people from Hyrule and transforming them into an army for Ganon to use. Link eventually saves the maidens, destroys Shadow Link and Vaati, and battles Ganon. After weakening the King of Darkness, Link seals Ganon inside the Four Sword, which eradicates all the evil brought into the world, and brings peace back to Hyrule. The main campaign is titled Hyrulean Adventure, and can be played with 1 to 4 people. The majority of the game mechanics return from Four Swords. The multiplayer requires each person to have a Game Boy Advance, which is used as a controller directly connected to the GameCube, so the player can follow his character if he goes off screen. Later in 2004, after the Four Swords Adventures game came out, Nintendo released the last Game Boy Advance game entitled the Minish Cap. Big thing with the Minish Cap is it gives us an origin story to Link. A long time ago, when Hyrule was conquered by evil, a tiny Picori came from the sky and gave a young boy in green the Picori Blade. Using this blade, he cleared the world of evil and sealed it away in a treasure chest called the Bounty Chest. The hero was entrusted with the title Hero of Man. Now, every 100 years, a gateway opens between the human and Picori worlds. Hyrule celebrates this with the Picori Festival and a large fair along with a sword fighting tournament. As this year's festival nears, Princess Zelda visits her friend Link. Link's grandfather, Smith, is a blacksmith and entrusts Link to deliver a special sword to the king as a reward for the winner of the sword tournament. The winner also gets to touch the sacred Picori blade. Link and Zelda return to the castle and hand over the sword to the king. After the tournament ends, the winner is crowned. It's a man named Vaati. Whenever Vaati nears the Picori blade, he breaks it, removing the seal and flooding Hyrule with monsters and beasts once again. Then, using magic, he turns Princess Zelda to stone. The king, Smith, Link, and others meet in an attempt to figure out a way to turn Zelda to normal. They come to the conclusion that the Picori blade could restore her. Unfortunately, it can only be repaired by the Picori. The king explains that the Picori could help, but they only reveal themselves to children. Therefore, it's up to Link to search for them in the Minish Woods. Many suspect the Minish Cap to be the very first Zelda title, because Link does not have his usual tunic and hat. In fact, he never really has a hat in this game till the very end. Instead, he befriends Elzo, a hat-shaped bird, who he too was cursed by Vaati. The two team up and locate a Minish portal, which allows them to shrink to the size of a Picori. They locate the Elder Picori, and he states that Link must find the 4 elemental artifacts to imbue the blade with their essence. Thus begins Link's newest journey. Minish Cap retains the cartoon style of Four Swords and Wind Waker, which, along with the power of the Game Boy Advance, enabled a greater detail than in previous Zelda handhelds. Nintendo also enhanced the item interface and included the roll from the 3D Zelda titles. We also got 3 new items in the Minish Cap: the Mole Mitts, which allowed Link to burrow through certain materials, the Gust Jar, which sucked in nearby items, and the Crane of Pakai, which overturns anything that hits it. As the story progressed, Link discovers that Elzo and Vaati were once Minish, Elzo being a powerful sorcerer and Vaati was his apprentice. Vaati eventually became mad and stole the hat that Elzo created, which was made for humans. This hat granted wishes, and Vaati chose to be a powerful wizard and turned on his master by changing him into a hat. Vaati leaves and searches for the light force of Hyrule, which will make him stronger. Once Link gathers the 4 elements, he fuses them into the Picori blade, turning it into the white sword, and returns to the castle. Link discovers through an ancient story in stained glass that the light force is actually within Princess Zelda's life force. Vaati discovers this and returns to Zelda at the same time as Link. Vaati knocks him out and begins to drain Zelda of her life. At the same time, he transforms the Hyrule Castle into a twisted, bizarro form of itself, and Link must navigate his way back to the top. Link reaches Vaati just before he completely drains Zelda. Link fights Vaati, and the evil sorcerer transforms himself into Vaati Reborn and Vaati Transfigured. After Link defeats him, the castle begins to collapse. He quickly frees Zelda, and the two escape into the nearby courtyard. But Vaati is waiting for Link and transforms into his final form, Vaati's Wrath. Using the Four Swords, Link defeats Vaati. With Vaati dead, Elzo floats off Link's head and returns to his original form. He gives Zelda the magic cap that Vaati stole, and with her pure heart, she returns all the cursed people in Hyrule back to normal. Elzo returns to the gateway to the Minish world, but before he leaves, he gives Link the now famous green cap, saying, "I've never seen you with a cap until now. It fits you, little hero," and vanishes into the door. This is the key part of the Minish cap, because before this moment, there wasn't a hero of time, but a hero of man, and Link never had his full famous outfit until that last scene in the game. Only now is the legend told of the hero who wears a green tunic and cap.